When you think about India, maybe you picture a vast, sprawling banyan tree, right? Roots deep, branches everywhere. The healthcare system, it's kind of like that. Incredibly complex, touching everyone.
It really is so vast.
And today, we're diving deep into one really core part of it, the hospital industry. We've got a couple of recent reports here, and honestly, the picture they paint is fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that just jumps right out is this huge growth projection.
Exactly. A 30% jump in hospital beds expected by next year, FY25. That's massive.
It's not just tinkering around the edges. That 30% means serious investment. It signals a real reshaping of how healthcare gets delivered. More buildings, yes, but also more capacity.
And it tells you this is a sector buzzing with activity. They're building new hospitals from the ground up, these greenfield projects the reports talk about.
Right, but it's also happening through hospitals joining forces,
Mm.
mergers, acquisitions, ways to scale up and reach more people faster.
Yeah, and it's important to zoom out for a sec. These hospitals, they're cogs in a much bigger economic machine, right?
Absolutely. The whole Indian healthcare sector is a huge contributor. Revenue, jobs. It's significant.
And growing fast. The market's been expanding, what, over 16% a year recently? That's pretty impressive growth.
It is. And you can see the government's paying more attention too, with increasing budget allocations. Healthcare is definitely climbing up the agenda.
It helps to see the global picture, too. I mean, healthcare spending worldwide is enormous, trillions of dollars.
Mind-boggling numbers. And globally, governments usually foot most of the bill, like around 63% on average.
Okay, so where does India fit in that picture?
Well, the reports show our spending as a slice of the whole economy is actually lower than quite a few other countries, both developed and developing ones.
Around 3% of GDP back in 2020. Does make you think, doesn't it? About the scale of the need versus the current spend.
It really does. And that leads directly to another critical point these reports highlight, how people actually pay for care here.
Ah, the out-of-pocket problem.
Exactly. Over half, maybe around 51% in 2020, came straight from individuals' pockets. That's a huge burden for families.
Which is why things like Ayushman Bharat are so important, right? Trying to get more people covered by insurance, ease that direct hit to the wallet.
Definitely. It's a clear push to make healthcare more accessible, more affordable.
But even with those efforts, there's this fundamental mismatch the reports talk about.
Yeah, the demand-supply gap. We just don't have enough hospital beds or enough trained medical staff for our population. It's like planning a massive feast but realizing you're short on plates and servers.
The numbers are pretty stark. We have, what, 7 doctors and 18 nursing staff per 10,000 people?
Compared to global averages of more like 16 doctors and 40 nursing personnel, it's a big gap.
And that puts incredible pressure on the doctors and nurses we do have.
It really does. And you see the ripple effects everywhere on quality, on costs, on the ability of hospitals to even expand effectively. It's a real tangle. Okay, so that's the backdrop. Our mission today, then, is to sort of untangle some of that. We want to understand how these hospitals are set up, how they make money. We'll get into things like ARPOB and EBITDA.
Demystify the jargon a bit.
Yeah. And look at the challenges they're facing. Regulations, competition, staffing, plus the new tech they're using, and where they see themselves going, like understanding a complex family business, maybe.
That's a good way to put it. We'll look at the different expansion models where they're growing and check their financial health report cards using those key metrics.
And we definitely need to talk about the hurdles. Navigating the regulatory maze, dealing with more competitors.
And that constant challenge of finding and keeping good people. Plus, the tech side is exciting too. Lots happening there.
Okay, so where do we start? How about the structure, the landscape itself? You mentioned corporate hospitals are growing fast now.
Yeah, the reports suggest they're expanding pretty aggressively. It seems like there was a phase of consolidation, getting their houses in order, and now it's full steam ahead on growth. Like a garden after pruning, the strong plants are shooting up. One report actually shows this visually, this expansion phase.
And it's happening in those two main ways we mentioned. Building brand new greenfield sites.
And also larger groups buying up or merging with existing hospitals, both feeding into that big 30% bed increase number.
The ambition is quite striking sometimes. Max Healthcare, for example, the reports say they're looking to almost double their beds over the next few years.
Wow, double. That shows some serious belief in where the market's headed.
Huge commitment.
It's like that tiny seed determined to grow into a giant tree. Now, talking about different structures, one report mentioned the hub and spoke model. Rainbow Children's Medicare was the example. How does that actually work?
Ah, yeah, the hub and spoke. It's quite a smart strategy, actually. Think of a large central hospital that's the hub. It offers the really specialized, complex treatments, maybe quaternary care, like in Rainbow's case for pediatrics.
Okay, the main center.
Right. Then around it, you have smaller clinics or hospitals, the spokes. They're placed strategically in different neighborhoods or nearby towns.
To reach more people.
Exactly. They handle more common illnesses, routine care, acting as feeders to the hub as something more serious comes up. For Rainbow, the spokes provide local access for everyday kids' health issues, while the hub tackles the really critical stuff.
So it's almost like a main temple for the super specialized prayers, supported by smaller community shrines for daily worship. Makes sense for access.
Yeah, and it helps the spokes financially, too. The reports mention they often break even faster.
Why is that?
Well, they cater to more common conditions, so they potentially see more patients get occupied faster. It allows the main hub to really focus its resources on those high-end, complex cases that need the specialized equipment and staff.
Got it. And is this growth just in the big cities, or are they moving beyond?
That's another key trend. The reports definitely show corporate hospitals pushing into Tier 2 cities, even smaller towns now.
Interesting. Why the shift?
Well, a few things. Growing awareness of quality healthcare everywhere, rising incomes in those areas mean people can afford better care, and frankly, the metros are getting pretty competitive, so it's tapping into underserved demand.
Makes sense. Okay, so hospitals are expanding, changing structure, reaching new places. Let's switch gears to the money side. How do they actually, run the business?
This term ARPOB comes up a lot, average revenue per occupied bed. Why is that it's so crucial?
ARPOB is really vital. It's a direct measure of how much money a hospital brings in for every single bed that has a patient in it.
Okay.
And the reports show that when hospitals improve their ARPOB, maybe through offering more complex treatments or better services, and also keep their beds filled, higher occupancy, their overall financial health gets stronger, they can manage debt better, it really drives profitability.
Like a hotel, right. If you charge a bit more per room and keep more rooms full, you're doing well. Exactly that analogy. And we can see who's doing well. The reports mention EBITDA margins, that's basically operating profit, are pretty healthy for some players. Rainbow, Kim's, Max, maybe in the 25–35% range.
That sounds pretty solid financially.
It is. And then there's EBITDA per bed. Max Healthcare, being strong in the big cities, seems to lead there. Suggests they command good prices for their services in those high-demand metro areas.
And overall revenue for the listed companies is growing nicely, too, around 12% a year, driven by more patients and that higher revenue per bed, the ARPOB.
Right. Both volume and value contributing. Interestingly, some of the relatively smaller players, like Kim's and Rainbow, seem to be growing even faster.
Why would that be? Smaller base, maybe?
Partly that, yeah. But also potentially unique models. Kim's, for instance, uses something called the doctor equity model. That sounded interesting.
It really is. Basically, Kim's offers doctors an actual ownership stake in the hospital.
Ah, okay. So they're not just employees.
Right. And the report suggests this really helps attract and keep good doctors. It aligns everyone's interests. If the hospital does well, the doctors do well. Apparently, it helps with occupancy and even keeping prices somewhat affordable.
That makes a lot of sense. Creates a real partnership feeling. Doctors are incentivized to provide great care, bring patients in. It seems key to their success, especially outside the big metros.
Then you've got different approaches entirely, like Rainbow, focusing just on pediatrics, using that hub and spoke model. They might have lower overall occupancy because critical care beds aren't always full, but they still get great returns.
Yeah, because their model is often asset light. By specializing and using the spokes, they might not need the same huge investment in buildings and land as a giant multi-specialty hospital. So even with maybe lower average occupancy, their profit relative to their investment can be really strong.
Clever. And Max Healthcare, on the other end, their strategy seems different again.
Very different. Max seems focused on the high-end stuff, complex surgeries, attracting international patients who often pay more, and being really tight on cost management. That seems to be their recipe for leading profitability in the metros.
So targeting that specific market segment, needing advanced procedures, leveraging their brand in big cities.
Precisely. Attracting patients, both Indian and international, who prioritize that top-tier quality and are willing to pay a premium for it.
Okay, so it's really clear there's no single right way to run a hospital business in India. It's diverse.
Absolutely. Different strategies for different niches and markets. It's a fascinating ecosystem.
But like any journey, especially one involving massive growth, There must be bumps in the road. What are the big challenges hospitals are facing?
Oh, definitely. Regulation is a big one.
Right.
The reports describe the landscape as, well, complex. You've got government price caps on things like stents or knee implants handled by the NPPA.
National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority.
Right. And then there's the Clinical Establishments Act, which is trying to standardize things, maybe including pricing down the line. Hospitals worry this could squeeze their margins.
It's like trying to navigate a maze where the walls keep shifting. Hard to plan long term.
Exactly. And then there's just more competition popping up.
From other big chains.
Yes, but also from smaller, focused hospitals,
Hmm.
single specialty places, cardiac centers, eye hospitals, that sort of thing. They can be nimble and sometimes undercut the big multi-specialty guys on price for specific procedures.
Like a specialized boutique competing with a giant department store. They can carve out a niche.
Precisely. And then we come back to that persistent, critical issue, finding enough skilled people.
The manpower shortage. Doctors, nurses, technicians.
It's a major bottleneck. The reports are clear. Not enough training institutions, particularly outside the big cities. Plus, hospitals struggle with attrition staff burning out or leaving for better opportunities, maybe even abroad.
That must make it incredibly hard to maintain quality, let alone expand. And it drives up costs too, right? Competing for talent.
Absolutely. It's like needing more skilled artisans but having too few schools and not enough reason for them to stay. And layered on top of that is the payment issue again.
Still relying heavily on patients paying directly.
Yeah. Despite progress with government schemes like Ayushman Bharat, insurance penetration, especially comprehensive retail insurance, is still growing relatively slowly. So a lot of hospital revenue still depends on a patient's ability to pay out of pocket. That limits access for many.
And one last risk, the reports flag geographic concentration.
Right. Some players are heavily invested in one specific region. Rainbow and Hyderabad was the example given.
So if something hits that specific regional economy or policy changes there,
It could disproportionately affect that hospital group. It's the old all eggs in one basket risk. Diversification helps manage that.
okay, so a complex web of challenges. Regulatory uncertainty, tougher competition, the talent crunch, payment issues, and concentration risk.
It's a lot to juggle. But amidst these challenges, there's also a real push towards the future, especially with technology.
Ah, yes. Let's talk tech. What's happening there?
Well, we're seeing significant investment in advanced medical equipment, like HCG, the cancer care specialist, planning to add more linear accelerators. Linacs, that's sophisticated radiotherapy tech.
So upgrading treatment capabilities.
Exactly. And robotics in surgery is another big one. Max Healthcare is mentioned as focusing on this.
For better outcomes, presumably.
Better outcomes, less invasive procedures, quicker recovery times. And it's also a draw. It attracts top surgeons and it attracts patients, including medical tourists, looking for that cutting-edge care.
Right, medical tourism. India does pretty well there, doesn't it?
Yeah, ranked highly for internationally accredited hospitals. JCI accreditation's a big one. We attract a lot of patients seeking high-quality care at competitive prices compared to, say, Western countries.
So technology boosts that appeal too.
Definitely. It enhances the quality proposition. Though the reports do caution about relying too heavily on specific source countries for medical tourists, like Bangladesh was mentioned. Political issues there could impact patient flow.
Ah, interesting point. Geopolitics influencing healthcare demand.
It all connects. And beyond the medical tech itself, there's a lot happening on the investment front.
You mean like private equity, mergers?
Exactly. PE and VC funds are very active. Lots of deals, lots of M&A activity. It shows investors see serious long-term potential here, and it's driving consolidation.
Any specific examples?
Yeah, the reports mention things like Manipul Hospitals making several acquisitions, Kim's getting significant investment. These deals are reshaping the landscape, creating larger, potentially more efficient hospital groups.
So more consolidation seems likely down the road.
Probably. Scale often brings advantages in this business,
Hmm.
and fundamentally, the long-term drivers are strong.
What are those key drivers pushing growth?
Well, you've got demographics. An aging population needs more health care. Rising incomes mean more people can afford private care. Lifestyle changes are leading to more non-communicable diseases like diabetes and heart conditions, requiring ongoing treatment.
Plus the potential in medical tourism we just discussed.
Right. Add it all up, and the demand picture looks set to keep growing for the foreseeable future.
So the future vision seems to be more beds, expanding beyond the big cities, more specialized care centers maybe, and technology playing a much bigger role in diagnosis and treatment.
That sums it up pretty well. It's a really dynamic phase. Growth, challenges, transformation, all happening at once.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up then. Our deep dive today shows the Indian hospital sector is, well, it's booming in many ways. Strong growth, lots of investment.
Yeah, but it's definitely not easy street. They're juggling complex regulations, fighting harder for patients and staff, and dealing with that fundamental skills gap.
And we're seeing really different ways of tackling it. You've got the specialized asset-light players like Rainbow, the big metro-focused high-tech chains like Max, and models like Kim's focusing on doctor partnerships in Tier 2 cities.
A real variety of strategies. Technology is becoming central robotics, advanced diagnostics, treatment tech, and the trend seems to be towards bigger groups, more consolidation.
Now, you pulled out three quotes that really captured the essence.
Yeah, I thought these summed it up well. One was about that projected 30% jump in beds by FY25, just underscoring the sheer scale of expansion.
Okay.
Another highlighted the strong operating margins, like that 25-35% EBITDA range for the leaders, showing there is financial health despite the pressures.
Right.
And the third acknowledged that complex, ever-changing regulatory environment as a really key factor that shapes everything hospitals do.
Growth, profitability, and navigating the rules.
Got it.
And two main insights for our listeners.
First, I think it's seeing how government actions, private hospital innovation, and what patients can actually afford, how those three things constantly interact. That dynamic is really what's shaping Indian healthcare's future.
Okay, that interplay is key.
Second, bridging that huge gap between healthcare demand and the supply of beds and skilled people. It's not a single fixed problem. It needs lots of different solutions working together, more training, better infrastructure, maybe new delivery models.
The multi-pronged approach makes sense. And finally, an action idea if people want to explore more.
Yeah, something practical. Maybe pick 2 or 3 different hospital chains we talked about, say Rainbow versus Max or Kim's versus Apollo, and just spend a little time looking up their recent news, their investor reports, maybe compare their strategies. You'll get a much richer feel for how diverse this sector really is.
Great idea. Compare the players to see the different game plans.
Exactly. Because ultimately, how this whole sector evolves, it's not just business news. It's fundamental to the health and well-being of, over 1 billion people. It's a journey that impacts everyone, and it's definitely one to keep watching.